Welcome to Our Girl Relationships. We talk about the problems people face in their day to day lives. Let's start with the video. I'm female, 30, and got married after getting pregnant. It's just been 6 months since our wedding, but my husband has changed so much since then that I don't even recognize him anymore. He used to be the sweetest person without any insecurities or doubts, but now it seems like he lives in a small bubble of his world and refuses to trust or see anything from other people's perspectives. I never knew him to be possessive or demanding, but it feels like that's all that is left to him now. Before I get into what happened on the day my water broke, I should provide some context. We live in a rental apartment, and recently this new guy moved next door to us. It was before our wedding. Growing up, my family had always shown me to be kind to new neighbors. Our whole neighborhood was like a big old family, and we used to offer casseroles and invite people over for dinner. Now, I know that living in a country and living near DC are two different things. And I have come to hold myself back from completely giving in to my roots. But then I saw that the guy next door rarely went out and probably worked from home. Our apartments didn't have the numbers on them or any nameplate, so the food he ordered sometimes got delivered to our door, and I had to ask the delivery guy to go over to the next one. I noticed that most of the things he ordered were coming from McDonald's, Dunkin', Chick-fil-A, and on occasion Taco Bell. It went on for 3 weeks, and I couldn't help myself but take over home-cooked food for him one night. Of course, my husband knew I was doing it, and he didn't express any concerns or hesitation over me giving the guy a home-cooked meal. He knew all too well that I love feeding people whenever I can get the chance, and this was just me being concerned and nothing more than that. The guy was pretty nice about the whole thing and agreed instantly when I asked him a week later to join me and my husband. That's how we ended up developing a sort of friendship. And since then, we greet each other in the hallway, and he sometimes invites my husband over for game nights and orders us food. But over time, my husband must have started having some problems with this guy because he started being rude for no reason and even took jesting too far. The guy got the hint that he isn't welcome anymore in our home, and since then, he's been keeping his distance. I don't know what brought on the change in my husband's behavior, but when I talked to him about it, he refused to explain anything to me. In fact, he got all defensive and tried to project his insecurities on me. He said that I'm taking too much of an interest in that neighbor, and this is unusual even for me. I felt insulted and quickly shut down whatever drama he was trying to create. If he can't trust me, there was no point in having that conversation, and I didn't want to spend my energy on the topic. But things weren't as simple because we still had little differences here and there. We'd be discussing the color of the nursery and we'll have a conflict of opinions, and the next thing you know, we start talking about how neither of us is accepting the other's choice, and then we'd bring up other habits of each other that put us on our wits' end. Things got really bad while we were discussing how we were going to manage the next 18 years. It wasn't even a serious conversation, just casual thoughts that wandered in our minds. My husband said that, of course, I'll be here always to keep an eye out on our kids' activities. To which I replied, it wouldn't be possible to be completely aware of what she does. I'll have to work, and other stuff might prevent me from giving 100% of my time to looking after the kid. That's when my husband said that I wouldn't have to work when he's making enough money, and he'd prefer his child to grow up in a family with a stay-at-home mom. He said that his mom stayed at home to look after him, and he is grateful for her mere presence. He wants our kids to have the same experience. That's how the argument started, and I said that I want to have a career and start working as soon as my kid turns 3 or 4. We've been arguing about it for almost a month without reaching any decision. In the middle of all this, My water broke a few days ago, and my husband used the opportunity to push his side of the argument. I was standing there having contractions and almost dying while he started making demands. He said that he wouldn't take me to the hospital unless we make a decision, and he wants me to agree that I'll stay at home until our kid turns 18. It was mind-boggling to me that he was trying to blackmail me into agreeing to his terms. I didn't even have the energy to scream or fight with him. There was no way that I'd drive myself to the hospital while having contractions, and my husband wouldn't give me my phone so I could book a cab. Ultimately, I chose the only option available to me and went over to my neighbor and asked him for help. He was visibly confused about why my husband wasn't taking me, but got over his shock fast enough to jump into action. He didn't ask me any questions, and when my husband tried to intervene, he threatened to call the cops. He didn't even know what the situation was, but was ready to fight if required. My husband followed us in his car and was with me for the rest of the delivery. But the damage was done and something in our marriage shifted. He was angry that I went to the guy I knew he had a problem with for help, while I was angry that he'd try and use a delicate situation to get me to agree to his ridiculous demands. We haven't been speaking, and the only time he looked at me was when he had to take our baby daughter from my hands. I was so drugged up and exhausted after giving birth that I can't control any decisions I make in this state. That's why I'm asking here if what I did was wrong in any way. The argument wasn't something unresolvable, and I'm pretty sure we could have found some common ground. But his actions have broken my trust completely. I feel like he will never have my back when I'm down, and I'm rethinking our marriage and our future together. Am I being an a-hole here, or is he the real a-hole? I got discharged today and have asked my mom to stay with me for a while. It was uncomfortable with being alone in the same house as my husband, especially in a condition where I can't even support myself without something to hold on to for walking. I know I'm being paranoid about everything after the incident before the delivery, but I can't help and not trust him. That man tried to use my weakest moment to negotiate the terms of our marriage. Now that the baby is born, I don't even want to imagine the lengths he would go to just to get me to abide by his wishes. I've also come to realize there are no talking things out this time, since he's already crossed the limits of being reasonable. He's still angry and insecure about me asking for help from our neighbor, and if my mom wasn't staying with us, I know we'd already have fought a few times over it. Thankfully, my mom keeps him under control because she isn't the type who'll be afraid of calling the cops at the slightest hint of danger. As for my baby, she's the best thing that has happened to me, but I can't even be completely happy about this miracle because of how scared I feel. I don't know if all of this is still hormones or if the bond I had with my husband is completely over, but I know for certain that I need to figure out what I'm going to do in the future if things don't change. We finally had a civil discussion after 2 weeks of toxic silence. It was exhausting to keep up with this in my own home and with a baby on hand, so I told my husband we need to talk about what happened and address what went wrong. I thought he would have cooled down and would have realized how wrong his actions were, but I was proven wrong the minute he started speaking. He said that if I'm ready, I should explain why I doubted that he'd let me suffer while having contractions, and why I took things too far by asking help from the man down the hall when I knew he had problems with him. I told him that I was probably an inch or two away from bursting open, and he used the moment to make demands from me. He was the reason I had to ask for help, because he took my phone away. I told him that if he still thinks what he did was right, then I'd have to reconsider our entire marriage, because that was plain disrespectful, and I can't trust him with anything. We continued pointing out things that were wrong, and I really tried to see things from his point of view, but there was no justifying his actions. He also refused to apologize for what he did and even went so far as to say that if he had to do it all over again, he wouldn't change anything. That was probably the point where I realized how pointless it all was. I've decided to end our marriage and move forward because even if somehow we tried to move forward, I'd always have my guard up around him. It took us 4 months to finalize the details of the divorce, but it's over now. It's funny how this all happened because my ex-husband wanted to have a traditional family where his kid grows up with a mom who's available 24/7 and a dad who works. And now we have a kid growing up with divorced parents. It's decided that my daughter will stay with me and my ex-husband will visit on the weekends and take her. The divorce process itself wasn't complicated, but to break up a marriage that was all good and suddenly blew up in a moment was hard. But things changed and so did our relationship. And now I'm just trying to live a life for my daughter. My husband is supporting us with alimony, and I'm going to take a few years before I start to look for a job. But I hope things will be okay. NTA, your husband is the real a-hole here for leaving a pregnant woman in labor standing there and not taking you to the hospital. It wasn't the flu or something that you could have recovered from. Things could have gotten way more serious really fast, and you should leave that kind of man. NTA, you're not the a-hole here. And that man needs to realize how stupid what he did was. Even if we exclude everything else, the decision to use your labor as an opportunity to negotiate can be considered harmful, and you should divorce a person like that. I, 36 female, am engaged to a wonderful 41 male man, Mike. We both have children from previous relationships. I have a 14-year-old daughter and he has a 5-year-old son, Luke. Luke's mom is Mike's ex-wife, Ashley. Mike has had some issues with never telling Ashley no about taking Luke on nights we weren't supposed to have him. He's cancelled dates with me and family trips, etc., because Ashley asks him out of the blue to take Luke with some frequency. He used to be much worse about it, but he's gotten better and has only been asked as a last resort. Well, this past Friday, sure enough, Ashley calls us asking us to babysit because he has concert tickets for Saturday night. Mike had to work, so he wasn't able to, and then it turned to me. I had already made plans that evening to have a mom-daughter date with my daughter. I had reserved us mani-pedis and a nice dinner. These mom-daughter dates are important to my daughter and I, since she is going through the mess that is puberty. I told Ashley I had other plans. I figured she's got enough family, friends, and money. She alone makes the same amount Mike and I make, not counting the child support he pays, to figure something out on her own. I was wrong. Saturday came and she was in a tizzy, blowing up Mike on my phone, begging us to take Luke that night. I stood firm and told her no, and that my time with my daughter was more important to me than her going to some concert. I silenced my phone and took my daughter on a date. We had a wonderful time and had an amazing dinner. We come home to find Mike royally angry with me. Ashley, her friends, and her family had spent all evening calling him, yelling at him, telling him how unreasonable and how much of a bitch I was for not watching Luke, and that I'm obviously going to be a bad stepmom since I didn't care to watch him. Then the custody threat started, how they'll take away Mike's weekends with Luke, etc., and he wasn't able to reach me since I had silenced my phone. It's calmed down a little since then, but now Ashley is demanding I refund her the $300 she spent on her ticket since she couldn't go since I refused to watch Luke that night. Mike and I have been saving up money bit by bit to take my daughter and Luke on a trip next year. Mike is just telling me to give her money from it and avoid the fight. But I don't want to. If we give in to these demands, she's just going to continue these behaviors and using us. AITA for not watching Luke on Saturday, And WIBTA if I don't give her the money she lost? NTA, but you don't have an ex-wife problem. You've got a fiancé problem. How dare he get pissy with you after the way that psycho acted? He knew full well what was going on. Why would you accept that kind of reaction? I would feel so betrayed. You need to make it clear in no uncertain terms that this level of manipulation and abuse will not be tolerated. As another commenter brought up, save all the evidence of threats with custody and manipulation of money for the courts. You should both take these threats seriously and get ahead of them by contacting the judge. Do not be passive and tell your man it's time he stood behind his soon-to-be wife. NTA, tell Mike to grow a brain. Does he really think his ex will get anything in court? She's throwing a hissy fit since she didn't get her way. A judge isn't going to cut the kid off from his other parent for that, not when it's her custody time. Why the hell does her family even have his number? And why the heck does he communicate with them? He shouldn't even be answering their calls. Block them and be done with it. If Ashley's family finds a way around it, change numbers. If she gives her family the new number, then Mike needs to take her to court and have it put in. She can only contact him through a parenting app document. How often she dumps the kid on you all and go for more custody. With the way Ashley is, there isn't much for Mike to lose. He can keep the same custody and still be alienated. NTA, this wasn't an emergency situation that you refused to help with. She should have arranged a sitter before buying the tickets or ask you long in advance. Her missing out on the concert is her own fault. Your fiancé is TA for taking out his anger and fear on you. She will never stop until he stops cowering to her threats. If he takes son on his time and the extra time she asks, then she doesn't have a leg to stand on, even if she did actually follow through with her threat. I, 25 male, am a lifeguard in a public pool. I'm used to dealing with a lot of things, like a man, 40, screaming at me because I, a man, treated his wife for a wasp sting. There is no F lifeguard in my team this year. I'm really used to those kinds of things, but not a while ago, in summer, at the end of the day while I was closing the pool, 8 p.m., I saw 2 little kids, 5 male and 4 female, left alone. They told me his dad left them in the pool and that he was going to be back for them at the end of the day. In the public pool rules, there is one that says no minor under 14 years can be alone inside the enclosure without an adult. That's why we do not let them in without an adult, but can't control these situations. I stayed with them after closing the pool for 20 minutes and no sign of the father. I proceeded to call the police so they can take charge of them and I can get home. After not many minutes, the father came to the pool with an open beer can and just said, "Home," to his kids. Not even a thanks for taking care of them after my 10-hour shift. I stopped him and made him wait because I called the police. With a horrible beer breath, he started yelling at me that it was his kids and was going to take them home, and why did I call the police? That he was just in the nearest bar to the enclosure. He hadn't abandoned his kids. When the police officers arrived, I explained everything and left for home. I did not see those kids or the father anymore in my pool, and I think I caused that. AITA for calling the police? Maybe I should have waited 10 more minutes before calling? NTA, the pool isn't a cheap substitute for a daycare. This coming from a parent that trusted their kids earlier than most. I'd be good with stepping to the washroom or watching from the gallery at 6 up, but wow, 4 is too young, IMO. At that age, I was in the pool with them. Heck, I was in the pool till they were 6, as they wanted me engaged with their play. Good job calling the cops. Up to them to call CPS. NTA, you should not have done anything differently other than not calling the cops immediately. The father was lucky that you were gracious enough to allow him the 20 minutes that you did. No one is allowed to drink and drive, full stop. You potentially just saved multiple lives by stopping this disgusting excuse for father from leaving with those poor kids. Who in the hell leaves 4 and 5-year-old kids alone near water? The negligence and entitlement here is appalling. I'm so sorry for those kids. Thank you for notifying the authorities. CPS needs to know that this is going on in that home. If he did this at your pool, how many other risks has he taken with his children's well-being? He is a degenerate alcoholic. You choose not to enable that. You did the right thing.